Before we open this meeting, I want to let everybody know if you're for or opposed to ordinance chapter 27 on zoning and chapter 21 for signs, the sign ordinances or the zoning ordinances. Please let me know if you're on the for side or the against side.
If you wish to speak.
If you wish to speak. Is anybody here to speak for or against either of these two ordinances? Going once. Again. Doesn't sound like it.
So do we close the meeting?
Prior to opening the public hearing, we'll just give a,
I think we got one.
I got one.
Yeah, I'm still,
There's always one.
I like some of it, I don't like some of it.
Okay, so we'll,
So you get 20 minutes.
yeah, so you get
Argue with yourself.
Use it all.
Before the mayor opens the public hearing, just quick procedures regarding the public hearings for both of the matters tonight. These are essentially there will be 10 minutes per side, 10 minutes available to those wishing to provide public comment or input regarding the zoning ordinance under proposal. There will also be 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition to it. So it's 10 minutes in support, 10 minutes of time for those in
I'll put this in
opposition.
between who like it, some of them.
Yeah, not to make a decision. So there'll be, the first period will be 10 minutes for those to speak who are in support of it. Once they're done, there'll be 10 minutes for those who wish to speak in opposition to it. And then once they are done speaking, the public hearing will be closed. I would ask the mayor and council that if they have questions or comments thereafter, to reserve those for tomorrow, because I believe there's another public hearing tomorrow night. So it's best to have all the input in before questions or comments are provided by the mayor and council. And also not to respond to questions that may be raised during the public hearing itself.
Is tomorrow night the same format as this tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it'll be 20 minutes.
All right.
Yes, sir. 10 minutes per side, yes, sir.
Do we have a limitation per person, the number of minutes they can talk?
Yes, sir.
Can it be posed by council, or will there be limitations? Is it
Because you get one person dominating the whole thing, I would say we'd have a, let's say have an election appointed a spokesperson for the opposition or for the.
We usually want to ask that if there's a large crowd.
Yes,
we want to-
it's
is
gonna-
there
Why
a-
don't we invite everybody in who wants to speak, and we'll see what we're working
Yeah,
with.
okay. All right, I'd like to call this January 14th public hearing to order. Welcome everybody here. Okay, to begin this public hearing on the zoning ordinance. So if there's anybody who wants to speak on the zoning ordinance, who's in favor of the zoning ordinance, please step forward. This is the zoning ordinance. This is the zoning, is that the signs, the zoning. You want to speak on the zoning?
This is basically DeKalb County's code.
Chapter 27, the zoning code of
So
ordinances.
it's a 500-page ordinance that we're going to bring over to have a code in place.
No,
Okay, is there nobody here to
Is that
speak?
right?
no changes other than
The names.
DeKalb County becomes City of Brookhaven.
Right.
Except for two other points, sir, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay,
There-
For or against?
I'm always for Brookhaven. There are two changes, and they're primarily administrative. Remember, you are accepting and looking at DeKalb County's ordinance, and over time, you will shape it to reflect more of the city of Brookhaven. And in our journey towards that point of looking at a large ordinance for a very large jurisdiction, scaling that down to a city, a municipality, we did look at the neighborhood planning units or councils, and we're recommending that that be eliminated because the government's closer to home here as a smaller corporate limits. And the other matter was on the subdivision plats. In DeKalb County's ordinance, all of those went to the Planning Commission for approval. And what we're recommending that remain as administrative function. And the reason for that is there are set standards and regulations that you have to conform to the subdivision regulations as well as zoning, meaning setbacks, lot size. So what we're asking is in order to be able to move commerce along and not hold them up, that we would like to keep that as an administrative function.
is the sketch plat still a public, zoning planning commission? So you're talking about the entire process, sketch plat, preliminary plat, whatever you want to call it, through final plat, that all is administrative? I'd like to keep the sketch plat on the planning commission, because I think that allows us the opportunity to have neighborhood input on a subdivision in an area. To do that administratively, I think may be problematic. I mean, once the sketch plat is approved and so long as the final plat is, generally consistent with the sketch plat, that's fine, but I think at some point we need to have an opportunity for public comment in the subdivision process.
Without,
Particularly in Brookhaven, because a lot of ours, we're not gonna have any big subdivisions, a lot of ours are gonna be infill. And if, I know one in my neighborhood that, people love to talk about, it went through, but, they also didn't need any variances, but I would hope that we would provide some, public hearing for that process at some point.
right, okay, the only thing that I would caution you all about that is that there is a fine line when you're looking at a sketch plan that is really conceptual in design.
That hearing is-
I know, that's it.
Well,
That's it.
but I think if you look at the DeKalb County, sketch plat, it's what we used to use as construction drawings.
Okay,
It's a pretty detailed set of plans. It shows water and sewer and roads
Right.
and all the setbacks and, everything is, it used to be construction drawings.
well, then, and I appreciate you clarifying that for me because different jurisdictions call that out differently. You're talking about the land disturbance plans, the full civil plans, are you not? That would be the
No,
water,
they-
the sewer, where the street would be, where the curb and gutter would be?
No, they actually have a sketch plat that shows that they're required to show their, preliminary water, sewer, roads, drainage structures,
Right.
so
Right.
so it's all shown on, and, you could give it to a competent, a land disturbance guy, they could build the
Could build,
subdivision.
right,
The sketch plat, in DeKalb is detailed enough that once that's approved, then there's not a whole lot of change going forward. I mean,
Right.
it's pretty much
Right.
locks into.
My only comment to that is, when you deal with a sketch plat, or as you described it, what I'm looking at would be full engineering drawings to allow you to go ahead and pull a land disturbance permit. There might be maybe a few tweaks, but it would really work its way towards that level. Your city, your planning department, your public works department, particularly the community development planning, is responsible for the issuance of land disturbance permits. There is a certain set of standards, engineering requirements, soil and erosion requirements, just to meet the dictates of the zoning for which that sketch plan is being designed, that dictates how it has to be laid out. I'm wondering if perhaps you might be talking about the aesthetics and the architectural styling as opposed to the engineering. My recommendation would be, and certainly I'm going to yield to council, but when you have a professional engineer that is designing these plans, and we have a professional engineer on staff that is reviewing that, plus the professional engineer that we have in Public Works, these become engineering components and matters that I really feel best rest with the professionals to review that, so that they then can be enabled to move forward with the necessary plats that would follow, especially working towards the final plat where that could be recorded and building permits could be issued. My only concern about submitting these sketch plans is you create a delay for the development community to move forward, especially when they are trying to march forward to take advantage of, weather coming. I mean, usually you see a lot of sketch plans coming in February. My only concern is we don't even have a planning commission yet. And, this council vetted
By the way, we need to get y'all's.
Right.
Are we anticipating any subdivisions? I mean, I know we've got a couple that are moving through DeKalb County, but,
Right.
Are we anticipating any?
I mean, I agree with Jim that we're not ripe for that type of massive development. I mean, I don't know, I can't think of any, Beaver Highway, would that be a different type of?
Well, it could be, parcels that are combined, assembled, and you could have maybe a 10-lot subdivision that could come in, something like an infill.
And I'm not trying to usurp the power and authority of staff when it comes to reviewing the technical matters, but I just feel like we need to have some point in the process where there is a public hearing for people to provide input on the larger matter of the subdivision, the density, and all those types of things that are being shown on the subdivision. And really, it's as much, you and I have talked about this little 0.15
Right.
acre, people were saying, well, it's been done in the dark of night. What it hasn't, there's been a DeKalb County public hearing, that's been doing noticed, they just didn't read that.
Mhm.
But I think at some point, and really because we don't have any large tracts of land, a lot of our subdivisions
Right.
are gonna be combining 2 or 3 lots and making 6 or 7
Right,
smaller lots of them, which all may be fully in compliance and no variance required, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, that process at some point, I believe, needs to see the light of day.
well, again, would you allow us 24 hours until tomorrow so I
Yes,
could give you more
absolutely.
information?
Yes.
Because
I tend to agree with Jim, I mean, I
Right.
think we err on the side of
But
letting
I-
the public have their
but-
say, but I wanna hear what you're.
Right, my only point that I'll close with this, and we'll pick it up back tomorrow, is that you skirt the edges and maybe even cross them into having a zoning hearing. Or, to create, zoning is very finite. It states what the density is, it states the setbacks, it has the building coverage, it has the amount of frontage that the building or the lot must have on a public road. When you get past that and you start trying to re-sketch, you've really, I think, and I'll yield to the attorney here, but I think you've taken away some of their basic rights. They're following your ordinance, what you've set forward as this is what is acceptable and what you must comply with in order to build in the city. I'm wondering if you might be thinking more, and maybe this is what I'd like to think about, maybe there is a way to at least get it into the light of day, that something is occurring. I think the concern of surrounding property owners or contiguous property owners are, I want you to be compatible with what is here. Don't bring something in that is so out of the ordinary that it doesn't create a natural transition, nor does it look like it's been here for 50 years. I mean, I think that's what you might be talking about. I'd like to talk more with the planning department about that. My concern is if you have a set of standards that you're asking the development community to comply with, and then you start changing that in a venue that's truly not a public hearing, we might get ourselves in trouble, because what is it there to rely on? So with that, I'll leave that thought to you, and I will make sure that's marked on my list, and I'll get with Kevin and we'll talk more about that. My point is not to have it hidden in the dark, but if somebody complies, just like when someone's asking for a pouring license or an alcohol license, if they meet the standards, then they should be issued the license and the permit. That's my only point. And to be able to march them along, maybe we're talking about how we give notice and let people know something's happening in their neighborhood.
It's probably easier to talk about the specifics,
Yeah.
outside of just because
Right.
it can be detailed and
Right.
exactly kind of.
Also, if you can, talk to your folks at DeKalb and see what their purpose and reason
I
is
will.
for the planning
Well,
commission
thank you. Yes.
approval of
Right.
the subdivision
Right.
plat,
Right, and I'm unfamiliar with what you're asking. I know a number of cities have done that, and what they found is it slows the process down and creates a quasi level of government being dictatorial perhaps, and changing things that no longer comply straightforward with what the codes are. So
No,
that's my only concern.
The final subdivision will need to come before mayor and council for approval.
Well, that's another thing, that's part of the deletion. This is an administrative function. You have professionals that are reviewing this, you have a set of guidelines, and in fact, their ordinances, their law, that the developer must comport with, comply with. If they don't, then staff cannot sign off on that.
So in the final plat, also conveyance of right-of-way and other public.
No, you're not conveying the right-of-way at that time. They are unless we have that in the conveyance block. But you would not want to take somebody's right-of-way, because I haven't seen a subdivision yet that's been built that there's not been some kind of modification in the field. And you would not want to, because you end up conveying that back for them to correct a curvature of the road.
But the final plat is not approved until it's been built and approved and everything's in place. At least in DeKalb County.
Yeah, and we need, I think that's
yeah.
what we need to look at, and maybe for a period of time,
The final
just
plat
because
is
the
essentially an
development.
as-built of the
Yeah.
subdivision once it's been completed and all that. Because there's signature blocks on there
Right.
for all the various departments.
In my experience, I found that creates more variances and changes than what would be necessary, but perhaps, maybe for a time, because we operate under this standard until we can show you more about what we're talking about, and not to disrupt anything with the development community, but I'm looking at the professional staff that you have, I'm looking at the standards that you're adopting that tell your public, this is how you build in this city, and these are the densities that we accept, nothing more. than that unless they come in for a rezoning. And sometimes it strays from that when you get into this level of specificity for review. So,
You know,
There's still
and
an inherent public hearing part of the zoning vote itself.
yeah, they have to come through planning commission and then finally get their approval from mayor and
So
city council on a rezoning.
City council and the mayor, there is at least one or two or multiple public hearings.
Right, I'm talking about
associated
something that's expressly zoned, that the standards are clear for that specified zoning district for which the developer wishes to develop or subdivide under, and that they follow the dictates of that code. They don't deviate from that.
I guess I've never seen a subdivision plat that's not been signed by the executive of the jurisdiction.
The highest elected official
Yes,
always
and-
signs
and-
off on it, but
Because that becomes, you know.
I really think it's a matter of practice. Many cities will have their planning department, their city engineer, everybody signs off, and then the mayor signs.
Yes.
The mayor's
Yeah.
always the last to sign.
Typically, staff reviews it and make sure they met the development regs, the regulations and conditions within the zoning. And then if there is any sort of conveyance within the plat, you know, whether it be any sort of public right of way, sanitary sewer, et cetera, that goes before ratification before the council.
Right.
And so that gives the mayor the authority to then sign the final plat. So that's typically why you may see it that way. Just a point of clarification.
Your time's up, I'm sorry.
I used all the time, sorry.
You called the opening of the public hearing. You asked for anybody in support of the
Zoning was.
zoning ordinance to come forward and speak. Then you also asked if anybody in opposition would like to come forward and speak. Did we close the hearing? Because if not, we probably just want to go ahead and close it as well.
Let's close it. Yes,
Can
we
we
can.
ask
Wait,
if
wait,
anybody
wait.
just wants to make a comment on zoning in general?
Well, I asked, nobody wanted to.
Well, it's,
I'll ask again, anybody want to make a comment about this zoning ordinance, or for or against?
yeah, just to be clear, you're not talking about closing the meeting, closing.
No,
this-
no.
this-
No, just-
yeah.
This public hearing for this
Public
first
section.
chapter 27, then we're gonna have another one on chapter 28.
Yeah, there's no comment. You just, the hearing is,
We'll
hearing's
close,
closed.
we'll close this public hearing, and then we'll go to first read.
All right, and this is a consideration approval of an ordinance to adopt and approve chapter 27 zoning for code of ordinances for the city of Brookhaven. This is first read. I believe this will be back in tomorrow.
Okay. All right, now we have a public hearing on the sign ordinance, chapter 21. Is there anybody for or against the sign ordinance who would like to speak? Anybody on the for side for chapter 21 sign ordinance?
How can you be for and against it at the same
I
time?
already asked that question. and then-
You said you like parts of it.
I like Marcus.
Just get in here and start talking.
Is there anybody who wants to do this?
Looks
If you'll
good.
state the public hearing on the side of ordinance, hereby open, and then you can ask if anybody would like to come forward to speak in support of it. If no one does, then you can ask for opposition.
The public hearing for public comment on chapter 21, this on the sign ordinance is hereby open. Is anybody who would like to speak in favor of the ordinance? Okay, Erica, I mean,
Before,
your name and where you live.
I live right here, Surrey Lane,
Your whole
Brookhaven.
name.
And,
Give us your whole name and your address.
oh, sorry, Erica Manudas, 2936 Surrey Lane,
All right.
Brookhaven, Georgia. There are a lot of good things in here. As I said, when I got this, there's some things that are in here that are deleted. I guess what I should say first is, in the sign industry, there's a distinction. There's a whole industry of architectural signs that I'm part of, and then there's a industry of commercial signs, which is basically your gas stations, your fast foods, your pop-up, cheap materials, kind of up and down kind of signs. Whereas architectural is more high-end, designer, good materials, more engineering, things like that. We design things to 110 miles per hour wind loads, whereas a little small commercial sign shop is just sticking up on the wall and hoping. No disrespect, but, so there is a distinction. The beauty of my business is that I've partnered with manufacturers, so I'm more of a broker designer and I've had the luxury of seeing both sides of this world. The commercial industry, they just want to put up a big sign and put as much on it as possible. Architectural will put up a big sign and put something elegant on it to get the point across.
Right.
I want to see Brookhaven, I'd like to see the vision to be merged, of getting it up there and not becoming a Peachtree City, if you will, where every sign can only be 3 feet off the ground. It's crazy. It's actually dangerous because as you're driving by, it's harder to look. when DeKalb County changed their ordinances several years ago, they didn't come talk to one sign company. They just copied something, and there's a Home Depot sign on this giant wall, and as you're driving 55, 60 miles an hour, you're like, what? You shouldn't have to do a double take to see a sign, that's dangerous. So it's not about bigger is better. In fact, in here, you've got 20 feet allowances for signs, height. It's insane, that's too big, maybe a shopping center sign, but business signs, 10 feet is just fine. I'm supposed to be on the floor side, huh? It's all coming together. I mean, there's no mention of temporary signs in here. Wait, here's where there was something good. But it got deleted. Oh, there was things in here about dilapidated signs. If they're rusty, if the person's gone, and then a whole section got deleted, and that was a beautiful thing. You know, you don't want that in your city. It doesn't look good. And it's not that hard to manage. What did I have in here? Okay, there's nothing on temporary signs, not too much, because they need a distinction also. They need to be distinguished between event signs, realtor directionals, rental property specials like an apartment having a move-in special. Used to be you could only put those up sun up Saturday to sundown Sunday. Realtor directionals, those are really, you know, if they're in the right of way, they're illegal. I don't want to take away from any of the realtors' work, but my personal Ashford Park is littered with little this way to this house and this way to this house. And some of them, they don't even have houses for sale in Ashford Park, but they've got their little directionals up just to advertise. It's not good. And banners, there's like 5 or 6 different distinctions in the temporary signs. And banners should be prohibited from being a main ID. I know 2 businesses right now in Brookhaven using banners as a main ID. It's not good.
It's in violation of the DeKalb code right now.
Yeah, Elena Parent was very helpful in cleaning up that corner. And then after they had a whole code enforcement crew come in, I said, thank you, Elena. And she said, thank you, Elena. And then I called her the next day and go, they put up a new sign and it doesn't have a permit. And she was like, arg.
I think our code enforcement is on the ball. Have you met him?
No, but I was told I'm not allowed to be on it because that'd be too mean. As I said, there's no, I saw the word parapet wall in here and I saw the word roof signs in here. The definitions are not strong enough. Again, going back to that commercial architectural, they got away from the roof signs because those commercial companies were undercutting all the companies who getting UL listed is really hard now. It used to not be. You got inspected once a year, once every 2 years. They give you a roll and you pay them a thing. Now you gotta get each sign inspected. It takes a little more time. Well, what happens is you have these small shops doing just crazy low prices, but then they're using thin materials, bad construction, bad mounting. Then the neon's too close to the edge of the letter because they're trying to squeeze it all in. That creates arcing and that creates fires. Not a good thing. UL listing is a big thing. I think you should consider it. Then there's, and the parapet walls and things. Marriott Lennox, they wanted one, but they don't have a strong definition of a parapet wall, which is the side of a building that raises above the roof line. You don't want it on the roof, you don't want it on the parapet wall, because then if that company isn't designed 110 miles an hour plus, then that sign's gonna fall. That's why they want it on the side of the building. But Atlanta didn't have a good definition, so they wanted the Marriott to put their sign where there was an office or a room, or like, then you're, killing some valuable space. It's silly, so they're still fighting. Anyway, I think that needs to be a stronger definition. There are several signs I know of in Brookhaven that were arrested without a permit because they didn't like how I told them you can't put it there. And they go put it up, and if they make us move it, you move it at your expense. I'm like, I'll pass. Go get somebody else. And they put up the sign, and I see it every day, and it makes me mad. But
along those lines,
go ahead.
tell them the reason why they put it up. There's no, or the violation is.
Oh, yeah, the violation is, in most counties, and including here, double the fine. You have a $50 permit, pay $100 after the fact. Now, sometimes they get this permit because, you know, you design something, you take it down to the permit office, and then some people, it depends on where you're going and the timing, and some people are like, oh, I'm gonna open next week and I forgot about a sign, can you put it up quick? And it's honestly, you're trying to do it, but we can't start building, and then it's 6 to 8 weeks sometimes. And it's just a timing thing. So sometimes people do it in bad faith because they don't like your permits. Some people are doing it because the client messed up and you're trying to help them out, but that's, neither way is good. You can't say, okay, you're a good person, you're not. But I think we need to raise the fine to like $250, $500. Say, get the permit first, but keep the permits reasonable. And they don't need to be square footed, they need to be flat rate signs. It makes things go simpler. You should only be in there, go in, go out. It'd be great if it were all online, but, you know, go in, go out. You have to drive up there, go through a process, sign up for this, sign up for that, and come back a week later. In Gwinnett County, I sometimes was sitting there for 6 hours to get one sign permit. And then I have to come back a week later and do the same thing again. It's crazy, and they make you walk it around. So I think there is and I didn't see a lot on the overlay district. The only one I know of was the Peachtree overlay. And in overlay districts, this is nothing I saw, and this might be interesting to have a committee discuss, is in like Sandtown overlay, City of Atlanta. They even go so far as to discuss colors allowed, and I'm not gonna promote that at all. But what I do like is they say materials that are being used in the building. So you don't have this, you know, stucco building and this really expensive building, and then they go put up a cheap red brick sign and slap a piece of plywood and say, here, Joe's business. Forgive me for, I was thinking of you.
Represent that comment.
Is that your company? But I think that might be interesting to look at as picking up materials or architectural features being percentage of the sign, the main IDs that you're putting up. And that will create a level of elegance that I think Brookhaven's looking for.
All right.
And, okay, those are my good ones.
I'm looking for my phone. I didn't leave this chair, right? I was trying to get the timer out on it.
Oh!
Thank you very much for that.
Let me add to those points in that, one, thank you for some very insightful knowledge.
Right here, it's on camera.
I'd like for us to have more of that type of public input for a lot of the decisions that we make. And I think that one person who's here that I would like to bring in that could benefit the city is Art Freeman with the Chamber of Commerce, and that it would be a valuable resource for the city to have information go out from the chamber to the businesses to get their input on issues like this that are really going to have a big impact on the business community. We need to be respectful of businesses. We also need to be respectful of the look and vision of our city. This is a major issue. So I'd like on future issues that come up for the chamber to be involved in these things, especially in notifying us as a city, notifying the chamber whenever we've got issues like this we're going to discuss, and we can get that information out.
I'm sorry, these old legs.
We're still in a public hearing, so I guess if there's more members of the public that want to speak in
We
support.
gotta kind of, I agree with everything you say. Love Everett's comments, or also we have great talent in the city and you're one of them, so. Anybody else who wants to speak in favor of chapter 21 sign ordinance? Okay, we'll close that second.
Anybody against?
Okay, anybody against? Anybody who's against the sign ordinance want to speak?
Yes. 20 more minutes?
All right. If you want to speak some more, are you done? Because you can speak against it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I think I really do not agree with the sizes allowed
Okay,
on that graph. They're far too big.
okay, all right, well, thank you. Anything else? Anybody else have any comments against the sign ordinance? Okay, the public portion, the public comments section of this, on this sign ordinance is closed. All right. Is there a motion for adjournment?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, we still have the first read, sorry about that.
You gotta do it again.
Consideration approval of an ordinance to adopt and approve chapter 21 signs for code of ordinances for the city of Brookhaven. This is a first read.
Okay.
Where do I insert my comments, or do I do that later, how?
He has some comments that we just wanted to add, and the mayor was gonna.
I have to remain to the point of committee.
Well, you-
Well, I guess a brief overview of the sign ordinance. What this process entails, at this stage, taking the cab ordinance, making some corrections to it, to keep it, to make sure that it's legal and sound. I understand the mayor and council's desire to maybe provide more policy, more input, more broad sweeping changes to the sign ordinance. I think that's good, and that's why you're elected. The issue with that is the time it takes to do that. And as y'all mentioned, often you want public input. Sometimes cities, they have stakeholders groups or kind of task groups that are assigned with either, committee member from the council or not. It may just be what is a recommendation or advisory group to provide a recommendation to the council for proposed changes to the sign ordinance. That's then taken later to the council and they consider it. That's usually a process that entails months. That group also have its own public hearings to offer more community input into it. Changes to what's before you, certainly they can, if there's desired changes to it, let us know about it. We will forward those to the outside attorney that's, preparing the sign warrants for approval, I believe tomorrow, and see if those are feasible. But if we're talking about really broad policy changes, I don't know that that's something that can be done between now and tomorrow.
No, I think we understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's some changes that Jim wanted that I think are reasonable.
Okay.
Money more, I do, and you can disregard the ones that are quote policy, but I do have a number that are coordination issues where certain sections of the code are not matching. One allows one subdivision sign per entrance, the other section allows 2 subdivision
Okay.
signs. So I sent out an email, there's a copy of it, you can just
All right, thank
go
you.
through and figure out, but really the biggest problem is there's a couple of charts in there, and I forget what section they are, but I referenced that the charts are not consistent with the code and vice versa. So I think we just need to go through and at the very least, clean that up so that Rebecca doesn't see them on the ZBA like she saw them so many times before.
All right, thank you. We'll look through them and we'll have the outside attorney look through them and we'll address them tomorrow, let you know how they're modified.
Okay.
I want
I
to
think we're
appoint a
just
sign.
looking for making the language of the one we're adopting probably by tomorrow consistent
Okay.
throughout, and just not contradictory, to other sections of it. I think we fully understand, we are simply bringing over the DeKalb code right now and anticipate that we will have a much longer process down the road where we will bring in community and other people and really sit down and think about what we want our signs to look like. Because this is an important way that we identify our community and will give us a look about Brookhaven, and we're not anticipating that's gonna happen by tomorrow.
Okay.
So in that vein, I'd like to appoint a committee, a sign policy review committee, for lack of a better term. And 2 council members, Bates and Joe, don't get offended. I'd like to appoint Jim Iyer and Rebecca Chase Williams to chair that committee.
I think you chose the best too.
Okay. All right. If we want to do a health food committee.
Raise my hand and watch it.
So how do I just need to, how do we do that?
Typically, if you're gonna anytime you wanna appoint a committee, you should get it on the next agenda, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It needs to be, under the Open Meetings Act, it needs to be noticed, it needs to be on the agenda, it needs to be public notice of it.
Okay.
And if you get on the next agenda, that appointment, would be the best way to do it.
Okay.
Our next agenda is tomorrow, so we could put it on the agenda for tomorrow.
I think it's already been
It's been
posted.
posted, right?
Have to be at 9 o'clock.
So we're looking at the 22nd of January.
Yeah.
I mean, we could,
You can,
yeah, we can start.
Meeting secret.
Interested parties could still.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right. And I apologize to everybody, this is the first time we've done a meeting like this, so we're getting to see, like, next time we'll be a little more efficient, a little more smooth. little sort of, but, the informality of this little house kind of lends itself to this sounds like we do for the first time. All right, so we've done the first read. Is there, anything else I need to do before we adjourn?
No, sir, if there's any other comments, please let me know about the sign ordinance, and we'll
All right,
approach those.
all right. I think we've all looked at Jim's
Yes.
pretty detailed email there. Yeah, anyway,
And I
so,
can send you, I think I sent it to Bill.
Okay.
So if you need it electronically, you can contact me.
Okay, I could probably ask Scott Levisher or Bill or about.
Just give you a card and send it to you electronically.
Okay, thank you.
Jim has no problem emailing.
Sorry. Tendency to read things.
Yeah, right, no problem. Glad to have you. So is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Yeah.